Welcome to the Sliver and Bite podcast, where we explore everything food, how to cook it, and even how to grow it. Today we're talking about sticky date pudding, also known, probably throughout the rest of the world, as sticky toffee pudding. Sticky date pudding is riddled with inaccuracies and contradictions. Not only is it not really a pudding, but its origin is quite messy. So let's get straight into the when, where, and why. I will do my very best with the when because it seems a little confusing. It seems the deeper I dug into the origin of the first ever ingredients or an explanation as to why it was created, there was another hotel or another person claiming to have been the first person to create it. So here is what I can gather. The most notable establishment that is claiming to have created it or made it popular is in northern England at the Sharrow Bay Country House Hotel. And that was now when I first searched it, it said the 1960s. However, there were some sources that were claiming it was 1948. And in my mind, that checks out because the establishment opened in the 1940s. However, they may not be the first because it was alleged that there was some Canadian Air Force personnel that were staying in the UK, and they were the ones that shared said recipe with the establishment in which they were lodging. And I'm unsure as to whether that was the Sharrow Bay Country House Hotel. There were a few more hotels that were coming up. The Yidney Arms Hotel in Scotland apparently was serving it in the 1960s and claims to have been one of the first. But also the Gate Inn, Millington, Yorkshire, claims to have been serving this back in 1907. Not too sure about that one. And the reason I say that is because the whole reason as to why the dessert was formed was due to the restrictions and the rations of World War II. It was said that post-war, this was something that people could enjoy because it was decadent and rich. And also the proximity to dates, which are native to Northern Africa and the Middle East. Now, my first experience with sticky date pudding was, I would have to say, early 2000s. I had a friend who used to work at a pretty posh restaurant here in Perth, and it was called the Witch's Cauldron, and their signature dessert was the sticky date pudding. It may have even been called the Icky Sticky Date Pudding. It was a fancy silver service restaurant. It was amazing, and it was such a rich and flavoursome dessert that then even 2 decades on, when I was operating my dessert dark kitchen and I was selling to DoorDash and Uber, I had that on the menu because it was a sure thing, and I have to say it was one of the most popular desserts that I sold. And I do see it continues to be a very popular dessert option, fine dining or pubs alike. It is probably down to just how easy it is, and you can prepare it ahead of time, put it in the fridge, zap it in the microwave, and it is just as good as fresh. And just one last thing before we get into the ingredients and the method. In 1989, the owners of the village shop in Cartmel, Cumbria, were the first to package it and have it ready to take home warm and eat in the comfort of your own home. Now let's take a look at the original and authentic ingredients. Finely chopped pitted dates, boiling water, baking soda, brown sugar, butter, eggs, flour, and baking powder. And for the butterscotch sauce, we are cream, butter, dark sugar, but you could swap that out for black treacle. But if you wanted something milder, you could go golden syrup. Now, looking at the original ingredients versus modern or Sliver and Bite's ingredients, there isn't a great deal of difference between them. So with Sliver and Bite, you have your dried dates, boiled water, baking soda, unsalted butter, brown sugar, eggs, and plain flour. For the butterscotch sauce, brown sugar, thickened cream, vanilla extract, or you can go the vanilla bean pod, and unsalted butter. If you did want to go for a more rich, authentic taste, you could go the golden syrup or the treacle. And as for the garnish, pretty simple. It's cream or ice cream. I'm sure that you could get creative with it. However, the dessert stands on its own. Now, I did mention that you could prepare this ahead of time, and depending on what meal you're cooking, it could be something that you do the day of or even after dinner. It just depends on your kitchen setup and whether or not you are capable of doing so. But listen to the method because it's pretty simple. Now, it's up to you as to whether or not you want chunks of dates or whether you want it more mashed and an even taste throughout. I don't mind them a little chunky. And also, I tend not to mix it as much. Gives it a bit more of a marble look, as you can see in the podcast tile. Once you have chopped your dates, put them into a bowl and pour on your boiling water. Cover with a tea towel and set to the side for 15 minutes. What we're doing is softening the dates and making them more malleable, ready to either mash, blitz, or just add into your mixture. You may need to put your butter into the microwave to soften up. We don't want to liquefy it. We just want it spreadable. Mix that in with the brown sugar, and what you'll do is end up making a bit of a paste. Add your room temperature eggs in with the butter and sugar and mix. Once that's done, you'll add your flour to the butter, sugar, egg mixture and mix until combined. It doesn't need to be fully combined. There can be some dry bits because directly after that, you're adding the soaked dates, including the water, and mix until combined. You don't want to overmix it. You just want to make sure that you've got all of the dry bits gone. Then that mixture goes into a lined baking tin and put into a preheated oven at 160 degrees Celsius or 320 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's in there for 30 minutes on the middle rack. Once you are 15 minutes into the cook, you want to put all of the ingredients of the butterscotch sauce. No need to stagger the ingredients. They all just go in together and brought to a simmer. Now you want to simmer for about 2 to 4 minutes. Any longer, you will make the mixture too thick at this point. Once the cake is done, retrieve it and place it on the bench, preferably on a trivet, just to assist in the cooling method. You want to get a skewer or a fork or a chopstick, and you want to stab the cake all over. We want to make little holes for the butterscotch sauce you're about to pour over to penetrate the cake. I've never measured how much of the butterscotch sauce I put over the cake. I'm guessing roughly a cup, possibly a cup and a half. Once that's poured over, Tip the baking tin back and forth just to make sure you're getting butterscotch sauce into the holes. If you're serving fresh, I would wait 10 minutes before cutting and serving with some fresh cream or ice cream. If you are going to store it, what I've done in the past, because it can be quite messy with the butterscotch sauce in the tin, I put the tin into an airtight container once it is cool to the touch. It's okay if it sweats a little. It's quite a moist dessert, so it's probably good for it. We're at the tail end of this podcast, and it's now time for some tips. Make sure you use a good quality brown sugar. Otherwise, it lacks richness. But to me, and all of my cooking, I do tend to purchase more premium ingredients because you really can taste the difference. If you are in a part of the world where you're spoilt for date choices, medjool dates is the go-to date. It is said to be the king of all dates. It is great for its caramel notes. Now, I have said in my method not to overmix it. However, if you do want a more smooth consistency, you can whiz the water and date mixture to make more of a smooth finish and then pour that in. It is completely up to you. It does change the look of it and you won't have any of those sweet chunks. Once the cake has received the butterscotch sauce, you can return the butterscotch sauce to the heat and further reduce down. It'll be a much thicker and richer butterscotch sauce. Back in the early stages of the method, you can also add some toasted walnuts or pecans to your batter for a bit of texture. And lastly, I have not done this, but I have seen some recipes that have added cinnamon, which might be a nice touch. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sliver and Bite podcast. You can head to sliverandbite.com.au to check out this and so many other recipes. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You can also head to YouTube and find me at Sliver and Bite TV, where you can find real-time cooking tutorials and cook along with me. And just remember, if I can cook it, you can cook it too.